Welcome, everyone. How are you on this rainy day? Yeah, good. Well, you're used to it. You're used to it. You're used to it. So I'm Madeline DiNono. I have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of the Gina Davis Institute on Gender in Media. And this is our If She Can See It, She Can Be It. And it's really about how we can use our voices and our power to advocate for all types of, women and diversity and equity on camera and behind the scenes. And we have an esteemed group of panelists, so without further ado, I'm going to bring them all out. Gina Davis, two-time Academy Award winner, my boss, your founder of BFF. Anywhere, wherever, if you want to be near me. I'm going to sit here. Yeah. Andrea Navedo, award-winning actor, singer, and soon-to-be published author. Jenny Halper, who is an EVP with Maven Pictures. Sarat Chaudhry, award-winning actor, advocate, ambassador for UNICEF. And last but not least, the fabulous Cassandra, who is an award-winning actor, also a tech entrepreneur. So Cassie Freeman in the house. All right. So I'm going to let Gina kick us off. And first of all, BFF is going to be 10 years old next year.
I know.
And can you talk about some of the success stories and what's been happening here?
Oh, yeah, it's been incredible. And I feel like the town, they're building new hotels and new restaurants and stuff. And we have really evolved over the time here. And so much of it is due to the folks who live in this area, and everybody who comes here who has never been to Bentonville is always like, oh my God, it's so fabulous. So yeah, we've had a tremendous success. We started during COVID and lockdown and all that, we started having availability of our films digitally, and now we have over 450,000 viewers around the world who, watch our films. So that's incredible. And there's been something like 10,000 people coming through here that have, been part of films that are shown here. So that's incredible.
Awesome, thank you. And more to follow, because next year's a 10-year. Yeah.
I was going to say, I was going to tell you about just one example. A director called Sujata Day had her first film shown here, premiere here, and now she has a series on Netflix. So so we keep track of our filmmakers.
We do. We have a really robust group of wonderful alumni. So Andrea, I'm going to turn over to you, and there's a quote. It said, "My life would be a reflection of my childhood, but it isn't. It is a reflection of the dreams that I had as a child for a better life." And everyone knows you as this award-winning actor and lots of credits and leading this glamorous life, but you're from the Bronx. And, you had a very interesting story as a child. So why don't you tell everyone your story? They probably don't know it.
Sure. So yes, I was born and raised in the Bronx. And it was during a time of just the economy in New York City in particular was very low, and my family and I ended up on welfare for a time, and it was really, really challenging. I grew up around lots of drugs and witnessing violence, and in my own home or out on the streets, and it was not fun, to say the least. But the thing for me was that I always had dreams. I would watch TV, and I would see like Brooke Shields. Like, this is a big deal. I talk about this in my book. Brooke Shields, because she was the it girl, and she was touting Calvin Klein jeans. Nobody gets between me and my Calvins. And I would look at her and go, oh my God, she's so beautiful, and I want to be an actress too. I want to be a model too. But that didn't seem like a possibility for me, because I didn't see people like me in TV and film, which is why I love being here and why I love everything that the Bentonville Film Festival is about. So that didn't seem like a possibility for me. But nonetheless, I, later on, when I got into college, decided to audition for a play. And lo and behold, I ended up getting a role. I had no acting experience whatsoever, and I ended up declaring it as my major and being a theater major and graduating 4 years later and pursuing my career. But the wonderful thing about it was that even though I knew I had so many strikes against me, even though I knew that I didn't see a lot of people like me in television and film, I was still gonna show up. I was still gonna pick myself. I'm not gonna wait for anyone else to pick me. I know the odds are stacked against me, but I'm gonna show up anyway. And I'm so glad I did, because I got to be part of the people raising their voices and saying, hey, I'm here, I have value, I have something to say, and I have something to offer. And by showing up, you know, to auditions and classes and getting those roles and making my way in the industry, I realized that I had a platform and that I had a ministry, and that I actually was taking care of the little girl inside of me who would watch Brooke Shields on TV and want to be like her and not see a pathway for myself. But what I realized that I was doing was that I was also creating a pathway for others like me in the younger generation, for them to see themselves and to believe that they could too. And so all of that to say is that I wrote a book called Our Otherness is Our Strength, Wisdom from the Boogie Down Bronx. And I say wisdom from the Boogie Down Bronx because even I didn't believe that where I came from had value. And I got invited to give a commencement speech at my high school alma mater, DeWitt Clinton in the Bronx. Here I was 30 years later going to talk to these black and brown kids sitting in the very same seats that I was sitting. And I'm thinking, what am I gonna say? Will they be able to relate to me? Will they be able to see a path for themselves up to that podium? And so I ended up sharing stories with them that I thought would resonate for them. And the concept of otherness came up. It was part of my speech. And the book became the springboard, the inspiration from that speech. So our otherness, meaning I'm not part of the mainstream. I feel outside, looking in. How do I make my way? And so, anyway, I hope I answered your question. I feel like I'm talking too long.
And we're going to hear more, and you're all going to order the book. It comes out July 18th. But you're going to hear more about that. So we're talking about using your voice and power, and right, Andrea and Gina have very powerful platforms as actors and advocates, but there's power behind the scenes. So I want to turn over to Jenny, but it's such a great story. Can you tell us, at 4 years old, what happened and how that led you to your trajectory?
Yes, so I was born with a birth defect. I spent a lot of my childhood in the hospital having surgeries, and storytelling in movies were the one thing that really, wait, can you guys hear me? I am not so, despite being an old millennial, I am not so tech savvy. But being able to go into a different world and see women doing kind of incredible things, to me, that was really what got me through a lot of difficult times. And when I was 9, I saw A League of Their Own. It totally changed my life. I still have the tattered VHS tape that I took with me to the hospital that I watched twice a day for a week. It is still in my parents' house in Brooklyn. But the idea of telling a story about women who could do what they wanted to do, whether it was be on a baseball team or get married, to me that was huge. And the story about two sisters who actually cared about each other above everything else, I knew I wanted to do that. So I ended up just, for a long time in high school and college, I was writing short stories and publishing short stories. I was a film journalist in my early 20s. I found that a lot of first-time female directors whose work I loved were not getting their second movies made, and I didn't understand why that was happening, and I wanted to change it. I noticed that a lot of the actors that I grew up loving were working all the time and the actresses weren't, and I didn't understand that. And so when I was in grad school in 2008, I went to LA and I decided to intern at production companies. And I reached out to every single company in LA and in New York that was making movies that I loved. I ended up at 3 internships in LA, ended up with 4 internships in New York. In 2009, I started working for Celine Rattray, who runs Maven Screen Media. Now I've been working with her ever since. And her motto also was, let's work with female creators and let's increase representation in front of and behind the camera. And so I think really I found the place that I'm at now by seeking out like-minded people. And I work at a very small company where there's 3 of us in New York, 5 of us in London. For a long time, there were 4 of us in New York. We didn't have a lot of resources. We were making 2 to 3 movies a year at pretty low budget. So some of the things I'm really proud of that I worked on was Kids Are All Right, which was the first movie I worked on with Celine. The Kindergarten Teacher is one that is very special to me. That we made 5 years ago, and I actually met Wendy Guerrero at Sundance that year. We made a movie called Skin that's really great. American Honey is another favorite, but we've gotten to make these movies that are really special. And now what I'm actually doing is we're really trying to do more studio films, so I'm learning about that process and how to increase representation in a totally different way. But that's a very long-winded, and as you can see, my brain takes a lot of detours story, but. And then I started writing again, screenwriting in 2016, and have had a bunch of films that have almost gotten made with big actors and fallen apart. And so I've gotten to see it from both sides of the process, which has just been really, really great. And I'm learning and growing every day and getting to hear people like everybody on this panel talk. It's just a continuation of my education, and I love that. I'm just really, really happy to be a part of this group.
And we're definitely thrilled to have you. So, Sara, you are a multi-hyphenate, but you started out in kids and now moving through that. So, can you talk a little bit about being a working artist in kids entertainment? What changes are you seeing? So, from the time you started to now, are you seeing more diversity? Are you getting offered a more broad base of roles? And what's been your experience as a youth going through the system and to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, I started acting when I was 6, and I just kind of fell into it by accident. I went to a drama camp on spring break in kindergarten with all my kindergarten girlfriends, and it was genuinely, I still tease my mom for it till this day. She's sitting right there. Hi, Mom. I am convinced that it was just a bunch of the kindergarten moms that were let's get the kids out of the house during spring break. So they all sent us to this drama camp, and at the end of week performance, there happened to be agents scouting in the audience, and a bunch of them came up to my mom after, and they were you should really consider getting your kid into acting, and my mom was this is crazy. No. But I ended up falling into it. We treated it like a hobby at first, just like I treated debate club and soccer and everything. And then it became something a little bit more than that. But yeah, when I first started, something I actually only learned about a year or 2 ago, my mom and I were driving in the car, and she was when you first started, your agent sent you out of the room during that initial meeting and told me that this was going to be very hard for you. He sat her down and he was hey, this industry isn't going to be easy for her. I'm going to work hard for her, and I see a lot of potential in her, but roles don't just come by easily for girls like her. And I give kudos to my mom for never actually telling me that story until I was a lot older, because I think she knew that something like that, or hearing those words, words have an impact. And when they're coming, especially from somebody who you look up to, or a higher up, or a figure of authority, those things make a difference. And so I guess against all odds, I, started working and getting roles. And things have changed, Madeline. I've seen, roles come by more frequently, but I think the trouble that I'm seeing now, or the issue that I'm seeing now, is that roles I'm not necessarily being typecast, but all of the roles that are asking for a South Asian actor or a Muslim actor or whatever it may be, they're telling a story that is singularly about identity. And what I think is really powerful is when they're women of color who identify with many different labels and identities that are just there. We exist and we're normal, and there's no explanation of who we are, who our parents are, whatever it may be. I've lost a lot of roles because they thought, we can't cast a family for you. Or it just doesn't make sense to have a brown girl in this role. And yeah, that's why I'm really excited about my new show that just came out, The Muppets Mayhem. It's on Disney+. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm starring alongside Lily Singh, another fellow brown girl in the industry, and what we both found really special about this project is that there was no explanation of our identity in the show. We were two brown sisters on screen living life and going through things that sisters go through. And so I think that is a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. So Cassie, over to you. I mean, we're talking about power and finding your voice, and you found your voice at a very young age, but I wanted you to tell the story about how your father inspired you and kind of you got kick-started in the biz.
Yeah, your parents, you watch them and you think, what these people do. I think you're so lucky if you get to follow your parents around. And, I was on the Kelly Clarkson show talking about my father, but equally as important, my mother owned a nursing home for over 40 years. So at a very young age, I thought it was normal for a woman to figure out how to own something on her own and also have lots of free time and just go live her life. It's very much like my life now. It's maybe I'm not working for 4 months. I have to figure out how to make that work. But on the opposite side, my father, I always grew up hearing this story before I was born that my father was, a part of something called the Black Florida Front, which is sort of like the Black Panthers of Florida. And basically they had this idea, and the idea was my father's has many degrees. He's 6'7", magnanimous, beautiful man, okay? Passed away about 20 years ago. But my dad, they said, okay, Mac, you go in there and you try to get a news job. And my father had no background in the news industry, but in Florida at that time, there were no news anchors that were of color. There was just no one in broadcast in Florida that were of color. So he went in, had a resume, he has a political sci-fi communications degree. He goes in, and they're like, boy, you can't even scrub the toilets in. No, thank you. Okay, and he was like, thank you. So as he's about to walk out, this man, Harold Baker, stops, and he's like, wait a minute. Maybe we can use him. And it was during a lot of race riots during that time. They're like, we might need a black man to go into the black neighborhoods. But it transformed his whole career. And I would follow my dad around after he retired, and he would do all these speeches about the things he saw and the things he was able to change as a news anchorman. But I was like the little girl who would introduce him at 5 years old. And I think it's incredible because that's still that same little spirit on the inside where I'd be like, yeah, so my dad is the first television news reporter, but I would follow him around and watch him do speeches, and it really taught me how important and rare it is that people can actually stand up and speak their truth and inspire and educate, and that has really been the through line in my life. I entertain, I educate, and I hope people take something away that's inspiring, even if it's just my presence.
Wow. And you do. So, Gina, I'm going to go back to you. So the Institute is going to be 20 years old, next year. And Gina accidentally started the Institute, as some of you may know. And you got a lot of pushback when you said, I think I'm going to start a nonprofit. And talk about, because a lot of people don't know what you did to actually get it started in the beginning, and then, the research and what we're up to.
Right. Well, yes, I had this idea. Well, it all started with watching preschool shows with my toddler daughter and realizing there were far more male characters than female characters, and I thought, why are we doing this? That seems crazy. So I decided I wanted to, do something about it in a formal way, and I talked to some people about how do you form a nonprofit? How do you? And everybody said, "Oh, no, don't. And I met with someone who someone thought would be maybe a donor for research or whatever. And I met with him, and he said, listen, before you even start, don't start a foundation or institute, because somebody's already doing what you want to do. And so just do it with them. Don't start your own thing and double up. And then he said, so anyway, but what is it? And after I explained to him, he was like, actually, yeah, nobody's doing that. Okay. Yeah, you got to do it yourself. So that's what happened.
And so, follow-up question. So it's been 20 years. So have we made any progress?
Oh, well, I'll tell you since you don't know. Yeah, we have. When we did our very first research, only 11% of lead characters were female. And this was, covering in the past. And now, almost 20 years later, the lead characters, both on children's TV and family-rated films, the males and females are at parity. So we're thrilled about that. And we've made a lot of progress with, for Black characters have really, it's not still reflective of the population. I mean, that's my goal, which I think is pretty normal. It's not extraordinary to want the fictitious worlds to reflect the real world. But what was the beginning of my sentence? Oh, I know. So we look at not just gender, of course, but every type of underrepresented population, including LGBTQ, people with disabilities, people with different body types, people over 50, and gender. Yeah.
Race, ethnicity, the whole.
Ethnicity, race, and ethnicity,
whole,
yeah. All of it. So we look at all of it. And, the great thing about what we do is we can measure whether progress has happened or not, which makes a big difference.
Thank you. Just so you didn't know, if you didn't know what was going on with us. So Andrea, back over to you. When we talk about breaking down barriers and seminal moments, I think Jane the Virgin is definitely one of those, and your amazing role as Z as well. So can you talk about the experience, what made it so special, and also she's been walking around Bentonville and people are running up to her saying, oh my God, I've watched Jane the Virgin 10 times. Can you talk about that whole process from audition to being on the show and even the aftermath, the impact?
Sure. So the funny thing is, I'm usually I'm an introvert in an extroverted career, funnily. But I had been working on a film in Los Angeles, but I was a New York-based actor, and my manager says, we want to send you out on some general meetings before you go back so that you'll be prepared for pilot season next year. Okay, sure. So I go to NBC, ABC, all these, and one of them was the CW. I'm sitting in the office of the CW, waiting to be called in by these two heads of casting, and on the walls are these monitors of the current shows on the air, all the trailers. And I'm sitting there watching the trailers, and then I notice, I'm like, but where are the brown people? I think I see someone in the background. And so I'm sitting there going, why am I here? They're not even gonna cast me. I don't fit this CW kind of mold. And then I go, Andrea, stop being so negative. Just go in there, don't say anything like that. Don't, ruffle any feathers, and just go in there and have a good conversation with these ladies. I'm like, all right, fine. So they finally call me in. We're talking, everything's going well. I have such a rapport with these ladies. And then the next thing you know, I hear myself say, I was sitting in the waiting room, and I noticed that you don't have a lot of people of color in your shows. And they were like, and I went, Andrea, what are you doing? You're gonna ruin this meeting. But no, they need to know that they need people of color in their show. And I'm going back and forth, and finally one of them says, we have so-and-so and we have so-and-so, but we do recognize that we do need more people of color in our shows. And I went, oh, okay. And so then she goes, you know, you would be great for this pilot that we have coming up called Jane the Virgin. You could play the mother. And I went, all right, whatever. It didn't mean anything to me. I would have to audition. So sure, okay. Felt like they were throwing me a bone. 2 months later, my first audition, I'm in LA, my first audition is for Jane the Virgin. And I read the script and I went, this is kind of good. And it's not. And here's the thing, what was great about Jane the Virgin that Zara was making a point of, it had nothing to do with being Latino. It just happened to be a Latino family living their lives, 3 women. I loved that Xiomara was a single mom. I loved being the representation of that because that's what I grew up with. My mom was a single mom raising me and my sister. So it was just so refreshing to read this pilot, and then it ends up getting picked up for a series, which was just amazing. And what I realized as time went on, being on Jane the Virgin, that Jane the Virgin was the show that I needed when I was growing up. It would have made all the difference. But then I also realized that I got to be the one to be one of those people spearheading, one of those people paving the way, lighting the way, right? Because I kept continuing to show up and say, no, I have value, I have something to offer, that I was part of a show that had a huge influence on diversity in Hollywood, although everything adds up to, making that, paving the way. But after Jane, so many people would say to me, oh my God, we just love the family dynamic, and we just love, we can identify as immigrants in this country, or as, females, or there was just so much that people could identify with no matter what their background was. And the young ladies that watched the show in particular were so grateful, and to this day are still so grateful, and get emotional when they meet me because I see what of an impact it had on them and their lives. So Jane the Virgin was huge, and I'm so grateful and proud to have been part of it.
Love the show, love the show. So Andrea was talking about breaking the mold, and Jenny, Maven, and you and Celine are breaking the mold. So I want you to talk a little bit about the business of show business and how Maven is breaking the mold and how you're finding a way to tell stories in a way that's authentic for you, that also provides opportunities. So if you can just unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been great to hear what you were saying, Sarah, and what you were saying, Andrea, about Jane the Virgin. We made a movie right before the pandemic called Driveways, directed by Andrew Ahn. And it was written about, it was with Hong Chow, and it was also Brian Dennehy's last film. But the script was written about a mother and a son that go to this small town, and they end up meeting this older man, and it could have been, it was written as essentially a Caucasian mother and son, and Andrew decided when he came on board that he wanted to make them Asian, but that it was gonna have nothing to do with the story. Oh, thank you. And that was something, we just came into that to provide financing, but telling a story that was celebrating people who looked anyway, that was celebrating diversity without making it about that, was really important. So I just wanted to add that because Sarah and Andrea, when you were talking, I was thinking about that movie. So the way that we started out doing it really was, Celine is sort of legendary. I remember when I started working for her in 2009, she was raising money for Kids Are All Right, and I would come into the office at 8:45, and she was raising money for that movie, and I would leave the office at 9 p.m., and she was raising money for that movie. It's very difficult to sustain a business to continue making $3 to $5 million movies. So I think what we have done in the last 10 years is sought out stories that have great female roles. And most of the time they've been front and center. Occasionally they're not. There's a movie we made called Skin a couple of years ago that is a true story about a neo-Nazi who's pulled out of the group that he's in by an African-American Antifa activist. It's a very male story, but there are 2 incredibly layered female characters, and we wouldn't have done that if that wasn't the case. So the first thing is looking for content. I read a lot of scripts. Sometimes I get cross-eyed. Something that I do to continue to try to keep my mind fresh in reading scripts is I look back at, I have like a stack of 10 great scripts that I'll read when I start to feel like I don't even know what a good script looks like anymore. It starts with the script, right? Then it's just, I go to usually Sundance and Toronto and Tribeca. Bentonville is a place I really want to get more familiar with in the movies that you have here. I just went to South by for the first time. But every time I go to a festival, I see usually between 15 and 20 movies directed by women, and I keep tracking lists of who all of those women are, so that when we're doing our lists, I can make sure that I don't think it's enough to have them be half female. I think at this point they need to be 2/3 female. We need to really be trying to hire women directors, and so that's one way that we're doing it. Another way is really now trying to change the business model that we have from making really beautiful small films that I'm incredibly proud of, that are dramas that have these great complex female characters, and trying to bring that to bigger movies. So our business model is shifting. We now have set up a bunch of TV shows. I have 8 projects that I'm overseeing on the TV side and 8 projects that I'm overseeing on the feature side. Every single one of those projects has a woman at the center of it. We're trying to make more comedies, more genre, but have that great female role at the center of it. So that's really our biggest change, is how do we tell these stories in a way that's going to get wider audiences, so that we can continue to make these stories that we love.
And so you heard it here. In the next 3 years, you're going to see every one of these fabulous actors in one of the Maven pictures, for sure. So, Saran, I want to go back to you. Yeah. You're more than a talented actor. You've been using your power in other ways. Can you talk about your work with UNICEF and your advocacy and activism?
Yeah, of course. So a few years back when I was, I don't know at this point, I must have been, I think, 11 or 10 when we recorded.
Slacker.
Thanks, Madeline. Yeah, no, I must have been like 11 or 10 when we recorded my voice for the film, and then 13 by the time it was premiering at TIFF. It was called The Breadwinner. It was directed by Nora Toomey. It's an animated feature, executively.
Great film.
Thank you. EP'd by Angelina Jolie. I went on this big press tour and ended up getting nominated for, the film got nominated for a Golden Globe and an Oscar, so at a young age I got to see that kind of whirlwind of the industry and that side of things. But I think it was at that point, working alongside, powerful women like Nora, like Angie, it shaped who I was fundamentally as a young girl. And also, growing up hearing the stories of my mother growing up in South Africa, being denied an education because she grew up during the time of apartheid, and then my grandma forcing her family to move out of there so that she could give her daughters the education that they deserved and so desperately wanted, and coming to Toronto, Canada, and starting a life there, I was surrounded by these powerful women, and I knew the sacrifices of the generations before me, and then working with other women that were, paving the way and changing the game for women in the industry, and expanding their work beyond just film and TV. And stepping into the impact and activism and humanitarian space, I think it was at that point that I realized the power of storytelling, as Andrea pointed out before, and I realized that, from meeting all of the Afghan women that would come up to me after watching the film and say, like, this story spoke to me, I feel seen. I realized that there was so much more we could be doing. We're telling these powerful stories, and we're making a difference in the lives of other people when they watch these films and they feel seen. But what if we used all the buzz that we were getting around this film and channeled it into something else that has a real life impact in the real world? And so it was at that point that I really decided that I was also going to lend my platform to activism, and now I've found a home at UNICEF. I'm a UNICEF Canada ambassador, and so we do a lot of work there, and I'm a big champion for racial equity, gender equality, girls' education, and I'm continuing that journey by going to school. So yeah.
Awesome. Yes, and not just any school. Not just any school. Where are you in school?
I go to Harvard.
Harvard. It's at Harvard. Yeah. I told you, total slacker, right? Total slacker.
My mom's disappointed, aren't you?
Cassie, back over to you. So how many people have watched either the first time or second time a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right? Fabulous. I want you to talk about your fierce and fabulous character of Aunt V and the story behind it, because Morgan Cooper reimagined your character, which would have impacted why you would or would not have wanted to take that role. So can you talk about the differences and the evolution and the empowerment of the Aunt V character?
Aunt Viv, you know, it's so funny that I grew up watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, of course, and it didn't occur to me until I got into this role of like, oh my God, that show, how much it like shaped my idea because of who Janet Hubert was, the original Aunt Viv, who was like my complexion, but she reminded me of people in my family, like very educated, like graceful, so it's an honor to play this role in this iteration of it. But Morgan Cooper, it's such a fantastic story. How many people in this room are filmmakers? Anybody here filmmaker? Honey child, this story is so crazy. This kid is from Kansas City. He was like 27 at the time, and he's driving one day and had this epiphany of like, what if we do the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but make it into a drama? And what would it look like if you did the dramatic version of that today? And you think about the story, now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, but he gets to that point and he's like, you know, I get in one little fight, my mom gets scared, and so they move into my, you know, auntie and uncle in Bel-Air. And you think, you see the TV show and you're like, oh, he got in one little fight. And then you see it today and you're like, one little fight in West Philadelphia is life and death. What are we talking about? And so this guy, Morgan Cooper, was like, I'm gonna do a trailer of like what that would look like today. And it took me over a year and a half to watch it because I thought, this is blasphemous. People come up with new ideas. Why reboot something that was perfect? And then my people send me an audition, and to echo what every black and brown person in Hollywood says, I told my people, I don't want to play any more roles of black women crying in the street over their dead sons. I'm over it. I said, can I just be rich, talking about my dreams, like my ambition? Can I dress sexy? And so out of the blue, this audition comes up and it's for Aunt Viv. And I said, oh no, we're not gonna do that one though. And my people are like, this is literally, she is rich. She's living a good life. I'm sure you're gonna dress sexy. And I said, yeah, but I'm not Aunt Viv, and this is a horrible idea. So anyway, my people came back again like a week or two later, and they're like, listen, can you just throw yourself on tape? And I said, give me a second. And then I watched this trailer, and I was like, oh my God, this trailer. Then I look up Morgan Cooper and look at his previous film, which was, this guy is a DP at heart and a director also in the brain and heart. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I'll pull myself. So yeah, I threw myself on tape, whatever. And then out of the blue, these people are like, can we have like an interview with Cassandra? Now y'all, who has an interview in this industry? That doesn't happen. Usually they say, you want to call back? And I'm like, these people are wasting my time. So I do the interview for this, and I'm like, but you know, I had my sides on hand because I thought, I'm sure this was a miscommunication. I bet you just an audition. Okay. No, it was just a talk. They just wanted to talk. But the talk, to lead back to what you're asking, is it was really about, they were like, hey, do you like young people? And I was like, this is the most insulting question, of course. I was like, yeah, I love young people. I got one I gave birth to. But also, I was a professor at Fordham University and at Pace University for over a decade. And so I'm like, I'm thrilled by meeting young people. Like, they the future. They much cooler than you know? And they were like, oh, great. And then I said, but thank you for this opportunity. But, you know, Aunt Viv is just so... It's not today. And these people were wonderful. They were like, no, what's your idea of Aunt Viv? And I love that when I said, you know, I feel like Aunt Viv is, yes, she's elegant and graceful, but I feel like she would never let go of her roots. Like, she would still have a twang in her voice from Philadelphia. She would still get excited to see people from where she's from. I don't think she would be stuck up. You know, I had all these ideas, and they were like, yeah, that's what we think too. Okay, have a good day. And, you know, thankfully it all worked out. But what I love in this iteration is usually when you look at these shows from like like the 80s and 90s, they were mothers. And in this iteration, this is a fully formed woman who is becoming. She is still in the process of becoming. She's not perfect. And in the old one, she was perfect. And this one, she's flawed. She's a little clumsy. She's everyone else's advocate but her own. And she's an artist at heart trying to reclaim it when she had to put it on the shelf for 20 years to raise her kids. So it's been a whirlwind. And then long story short, I just met the original Aunt Viv just recently, just 2 days ago, out of the blue on accident. And I walk in and I felt like, the whole room sort of like lifted me up. And the whole time I was like, maybe we don't need to meet her. What are we doing? And I met her and all I could do was bow to her. And I said, I bowed to her. It was like looking into the sun, looking at Janet Hubert. And she was like, I was so nervous for the show, but she's like, you've made it your own. There's nothing to be nervous about. And I said, I never thought about me being a professor and the way I live my life echoes so much of who Aunt Viv was on that show. And I'm just so grateful to who she is for all the reasons why the little girls are for you. I always thought I was beautiful because Janet Hubert was so beautiful. So that's my answer.
Such a great story, such a great story. So definitely make sure you tune in. So, we've talked with Gina a lot about her role at the Institute and her role at BFF, but she's still a working actor and a great one. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about P Island. And then also we had some news about another project. Yeah, so talk about, yes.
Sorry, I forgot. Yes, so I just finished filming a role in this movie that its first time directing is, why, of course, I was blank on her name.
Zoe Kravitz.
What?
Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah, Zoe Kravitz. Why would that go out of my head all of a sudden? I was scared I wouldn't remember it, and then of course I didn't. Zoe Kravitz, first-time director, was amazing, and Channing Tatum is the star.
Oh, okay.
And I play. He's a very. I don't want to explain too much of the plot, but he's a very wealthy, globe-trotting person, and I'm his assistant. And I'm a terrible assistant. I'm constantly dropping things, and I fall in a pool, and I'm just kind of a mess. But then it's a thriller, and we find out later why was I like that. So anyway, it was a great fun.
What attracted you to that role?
It was a chance to be funny in a movie that's not really about funny. So I don't know. I thought it sounded great.
And it wasn't very cold where you were filming, right?
Oh, yeah, we were in the Yucatan in Mexico shooting in the middle of summer, and it was 100 degrees every day and 90% humidity. It was really hot. It was really difficult. I started keeling over one day, and they always have medics on the set in case of anything. And they were so excited because I never had to do anything. So they were like 6 of them in my room, like, let's give her an IV and all that stuff.
But that was after. Weren't you wearing like an extremely heavy?
Oh, yeah. So my character only wore pink. Everything was pink. And the costumer found a pink evening gown, but it was entirely beaded. And you know how heavy those things are. And we're out at noon, and I wasn't working out.
But she made it, and she's here. Yay! So, Andrea, I want to go back to you. You said, I'm an introvert in an extroverted world. And you started to talk to us a little bit about your book, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the book and the journey and the stories that you're trying to tell.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the book was inspired on this commencement speech that I gave to my high school alma mater in the Bronx. And one of the things that I shared in the speech was that it had taken me 5 years to graduate high school, and it was something that I was very ashamed about. But I wanted to share that with those kids for them to see that in spite of the fact that it took me that long to graduate because there were issues going on in my life that were preventing me from doing so. That I still came out winning, that a diploma doesn't say that you know, how long it takes to graduate. It just says you graduated. And so at the end of that speech, one of the young ladies comes up to me and with tears in her eyes, she says, "Thank you for sharing that it took you 5 years to graduate, because I'm graduating today and it's taken me 5 years. And you still came out winning." And that was everything to me. And so this book is about the fact that you may think that things are strikes against you. Like for me, the strikes against me were being brown, Latina, from the Bronx, growing up in adverse conditions, low economic conditions, that in spite of all of that, instead of it being a strike against me or keeping me down, that I saw it as something that could hone me and make me stronger. And that my otherness was my strength, that all of the adversity that I went through prepared me for a very challenging career in entertainment. You know, it's a crazy idea to decide you want to be an actor, in my opinion. I still believe that. You know, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy because you have to really want it so bad that you would be willing to eat that shit sandwich in order to get to, you know, the good stuff. But it was growing up the way I did, instead of viewing it as a negative, I chose to see it as a positive. And I wanted those kids sitting in those seats to see that potential for themselves too, that the challenges that they were going through could be the thing that they could just dig into and go, yes, I'm gonna use that as fuel to get ahead and make my life better. And so that's what the book is about. It's about inspiring, it's about motivating, and believing that no matter what your challenges are, you can use that and turn it around and just change the way that you're seeing it, and get ahead and win, be on top. So that's what the book is really about.
And you've all pre-ordered on your phones at Amazon before you walk out the door.
Love you, Madeline.
Yes, yes. It's all about shameless promotion. So, Jenny, can you talk a little bit? You've talked about the projects and Celine, but can you talk about the financial models that you're looking at? You know, what kind of budgets are you working? Where are you getting your financial resources? Because the hardest thing for you as filmmakers, and particularly if you're female or people of color, is access to capital, right? You know how to get it made, but access to capital and then finding distribution. Can you walk us through, you know, your model?
I can walk you through the model. I will say that the financing piece of it is usually not my strength. So, you know, I mean, that's really why it's important to find partners who have skill sets that you don't. So the movies that we've made at Maven, for the most part, for the last, you know, gosh, I've been at that company since I've been with Celine since 2009. We've had Maven since 2011. I often say, people say, how long have you been at Maven? I say, since their birth, not my own. But, you know, I mean, I think it's you have to find people who are good at networking with rich people. That's one thing, right? And then the other way to do it is, like, there's multiple paths, right? So for a $3 to $5 million movie, you go out to, you know, partners who are high net worth. You can also there are companies that are able to give you that capital. But right now, really, our financial model is studio setups. And then for the projects that I have that are my own projects, either projects I've written for other producers or projects that I've written that I'm producing with other producers, right now we are still in that sort of windmill cycle of, you have 3 actors attached. You know, CAA says this is a $4 million budget. This is a $4 million budget with this cast. You have a $5 million budget. You have to figure out how to get that other million. So there are several different models you can use. I'm really impressed with the filmmakers I've talked to at this festival who figured out how to make a movie for $500K. Like, that's incredible, because if you can do that and then you give your investor their money back the next time you go and you make a movie, you can maybe go make that for 1 or 1.5 and find investors who go back to those same investors because you've given them their money back. So there's the indie model. that Maven has worked in for a really long time. There's the micro budget model that I've met a lot of people here that have successfully worked in that model. And then there's the studio model, which again, I've said I'm very new to. I know there are gonna be a lot of other roadblocks, but that comes with more visibility. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Was
Yeah.
that helpful for you?
Yeah.
Good.
I just want clarification. What is the studio model? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I mean, it means we take a package into a list of 5 to 10 studios, and if one of them says yes, then we get.
A package of like name actors attached with some sort of like.
Sometimes it's name actors, sometimes it's just a script. We have a couple of things that we're putting together pitches. Obviously, the writer's strike has totally changed what we can do right now. Most of our projects that are in the development phase, which means that either a script's not being written or it's, an earlier phase, a lot of that is on hold. But in terms of the studio model, it's saying instead of making a $3 to $5 million movie, we're going to make a movie that's $20 million, but that means that we have to have, a certain level of director. It has to be a certain type of film.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, I want to go back over to you because when we talk about taking control of your destiny, you're venturing beyond acting, beyond your activism, into writing. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it all kind of goes back to seeing the people around me. I worked with Sinking Ship Entertainment for a long while as a kid, and I saw a lot of female writers that they had on board, and JJ's awesome, so is Kristen. They let me write an episode of Dino Dana, which was a series that we did 4 seasons and a movie of, and yeah, they let me write an episode when I was 13, and
Again, slacker.
no, but no, it was that kind of experience that I was like, oh, I can maybe do this. I think it's so easy, especially as young girls, to feel like we just simply can't do something because we're not perfect at it. And I got into this trap just as a young girl. I mean, I just turned 19, so it's like a thing I'm still working on. But if I'm not 100% good at something or 100% confident, I'll try not to go for it because I'm like, how am I gonna pull it off? But then like the confidence of like an average dude, like I wish I had, like I tell my friends all the time, I'm like, I wish I had the confidence of like a middle-aged white guy that just like thinks he can do anything. And I'm like, it's so true. Like guys in my computer science class in high school used to shush me because I would like be trying to get an answer to one of the problem sets, and they would like take the pencil away from me and be like, no, I got this. And my answer would be right, but they were just so confident in themselves and thought that they knew that they were doing that they were just like, no, I got this. And I was like, no, I do actually got this. Thank you. But yeah, it was that experience of like, okay, maybe this is something I can do that kind of pushed me. And now I'm venturing into writing and seeing if it's something that I really, really want to do. I think it was many years of also being told no and not seeing the kind of stories and the representation that I wanted. That pushed me to want to write my own stuff and kind of take things into my own hands, whether that was, again, like Muslim representation, South Asian representation, female representation. Those were all things that were really important to me, and I just wasn't seeing it, and I didn't see myself growing up on screen. And so, yeah, I'm now working maybe on a feature film with some Oscar-nominated producers that I worked with in the past on The Breadwinner, and we're gonna see if we can do something there. But yeah, I think I want to explore all different sides of the industry. I definitely see myself directing, producing, whatever it may be. I think I'm still early in this side of things and this side of the industry, so I'll kind of venture out and see what kind of speaks to me the most. But in some capacity, moving beyond just being on screen, being behind the camera, and making a difference from the inside.
Isn't that amazing? And hopefully it'll be here So, Cassie, I want to go over to you because we're talking about taking control of your destiny, disrupting the model, and you are a tech entrepreneur, and you are turning Hollywood upside down and also being very innovative. So can you tell us all about Creatricity? I had to say that 5 times to get it right. And how you're really not only providing opportunities, but you're changing the model on how people can find great people.
Yeah, well, I just realized, so I asked you, like, who's the filmmaker in the room? Just to finish that up, Morgan Cooper did that trailer for his film. Then he's such a manifester that he was like, he flew himself out to LA, and then he dropped this trailer that he made with his own money, put it on YouTube, and sat back and waited. And like the first day, there was like 10,000 views for that trailer. And he was just hoping that Will Smith wouldn't sue him. And thankfully, Will Smith did not sue him. And now it's like millions of people saw it. But during that process, Will Smith called him and was like, are you serious? I love that Will Smith has like CIA people out here somehow who just found this guy's information. And they were able to start a deal. But I think that's so important for filmmakers to see, like, you don't even have to do the whole thing. Just that he had a 3-minute trailer was enough for this guy in Kansas City who had no ties to Hollywood to, boom, have the biggest hit on Peacock right now. It's like the number one subscribed show for them. But all because this boy is from Kansas City and had his own idea. So it's so important just to stay inspired, because there are many roads to get into this industry, which then comes back to this idea. Creatricity, I like to say it's like IMDb had a baby with LinkedIn. And the way I came up with, and I'll just speak into what it does, but I always like to say the reason I created it is that back in the old days, we used to go to auditions and we'd all see each other in audition rooms, and I would always see my favorite people in the rooms. I'm like, someone should throw a party for us so we can just hang out. Like, I hate the only time I could see my friends were like in the audition room or at an awards or at a film festival, if you're lucky. It's like you live this gypsy lifestyle and you have to be lucky to bump into these people. And I kept saying that for like 3 or 4 years. And finally I said, you know what? I'm just gonna throw myself a black dress brunch, okay? If you're an actress, you're black dress, come on over to my house or this time and we're gonna have a brunch, okay? And so about 30 women came over. Some of them had their own TV shows. Some people were still emerging, and during that gathering, it was so fulfilling for us to all be in the same room and to hear what we were up to, but also to highlight how we were all multi-hyphenates as well. And I was like, I'm gonna do this again. So like a year later, I called up my girlfriend, who's now the CEO of my company. I said, let's do it again, but just make it actresses in general and see who comes out. That time, like 100 women came out. It was like International Women's. I didn't even know that was a thing on the calendar then. And the same thing happened, and I said, who in this room has other passions other than just being an actress, writer, director? And everyone in the room had other things they were up to. Almost everyone up on the stage are multi-hyphenates. And then I said, so how are you gonna get like that shampoo thing done? Okay, and you say you need a businessman, how are you gonna get that done? And I realized, and some of these people are Emmy Award-winning actresses, and what I realized is Hollywood plays a game with your mind that says, don't worry, one day you're gonna get there and all the secrets are revealed, and all the people to work with will be revealed. It's a lie. That don't exist, y'all. It don't exist. So I was like, how do we fix this problem? And I thought, why don't we even have like a LinkedIn in Hollywood? And then I thought, but forget that. It's not just about me as an actor trying to get in touch with a producer. It's also about like, how do I find the right publicist? Or like it takes a team to have a career in this industry. And the way most of us have made our decisions have been based on like guesswork or your gut, which is, I don't even choose my Chinese food like that. I go to Yelp at least to be like, is this a good Chinese food place? Honey, right, is this a good taco? How do I know? Well, I should have that type of information when I'm looking for the entire team to put together my film, or the entire team when I'm trying to do something outside of this industry. So Creatricity is a place where you have to be a vetted professional. That means we vet every person who comes into this world, and in there you get to see people's portfolios, and as we get more money to fund it, it becomes a place where you can create as well. So if you're a writer and you have your portfolio of like pitches, someone can just press a button for that NDA and see those scripts, and then they can press another button to say, let's take this to the next level. I like to think if Kerry Washington was on this, or like your other favorite actress, Kate Blanchett, I'm sure she don't need the money, but let's say she did, and she wanted to finance something, she's like, guys, me and these 2 other people are doing something, we still need 2 more producers and we need $500,000. In a second, I'd be like, I got $200,000. Can I be a producer? Oh my God. And I think it would accelerate people to be in this industry, accelerate people's credits, accelerate how people want to put together a whole entire Southeast Asian crew, which is what actually, when you think about, there was a great movie that came out a few years ago. That's exactly what they wanted to do. It took them 3 years to find that crew, because you can't even do that online. People want to be intentional with the content. And I like to think the reason Bel Air is so successful is that they were intentional, that the writers, that the directors all had some type of idea about what is Philadelphia, who are black people. Don't translate blackness to white people, just tell your own truth and everyone will understand it. And so that's what creativity is. It's like a touch of a button, get everything done in one house.
You just made my job like 10,000 times easier.
Oh my God, help me find the money. It's such low-hanging fruit in our industry. And it doesn't make sense to me that it doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist because they don't want us to have the information or the ease to create. I'm like, I don't care that there's a writer's strike. We should still be able to talk and communicate. And the thing about my company is that we have pop-up events, so you can also do this and be in the same room with each other. And also, the biggest part that I really is so important to this app is, yeah, you have all these tools that don't exist right now. LinkedIn don't have these tools, you know. J-Lo got an account on LinkedIn, but she don't post because she like, what am I going to use this for? But the thing that's really important too in Hollywood is like a glass door. Like, people need to know, hey, I'm a first series regular. That means I'm a character who's going to be on a TV show every single day. What is like the range of amount of money I should be looking forward to? What are the contract negotiation points? And I remember one year I was at the Emmys, and a very famous actress who everybody in this room would know, but she is a woman, and she's a woman of color. And she talked about how she got her contract. She's about to make millions of dollars. And the showrunner said, yeah, but what contract points do you need? She didn't know. She didn't even know that there were contract points. And then I talked to my girlfriend, who's a producer on another show with another big name actress who is not black. Honey, the things this woman asked for, an extra trailer so her son could come to set and play, all the things. And so I say all that to say, just because you have an agent and manager in this industry, they do not go out of their way to tell you what the buffet is. They don't tell you what's on the menu. They just say, how much money do you want to make? And they hope you don't say too much, you know? So Creatricity is trying to shatter that, because, you know, all boats lift high when the tide is high. Isn't that what they say, y'all? So Creatricity, that's what it is. So if you have any money and you'd like to help finance the second iteration of our app, please let me know. We're building money right now for the second iteration.
Good, I'm glad you said that.
Yes,
Great.
ma'am. Okay, this woman, she understands. Thank you, ma'am.
So I think we have time. I know we started late, so we have time for like 1 or 2 questions. Does anyone have a question? All the way in the back. I think you have a green shirt on. No, yeah, you. No, yeah.
I just have a question for Jenny Halper, and I wanted to ask you, like, with your experience in the film industry, what do you think are the next steps that it needs to take to better take care of the writers and crew members and all the people behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see on the screen?
Can you? No. Oh. Yes, but she was talking about safety for actors and crew, you know, in productions.
And better taking care of
And
writers.
better taking care of-
taking
yeah.
care of writers and
Yeah.
below the line. It's a really good question. I'm really hoping that when this writer's strike ends, whether it's in October or November, writers are going to be better taken care of, period, because I do find while in TV, writers do have, maybe not financially, but they do have some oversight in film. The writer is the first person to get thrown off of a film. The writer is often treated not that well. I'm hoping the writer's strike changes things. I think it really comes from conversations. I think it really comes from top down. So I think it's really about producers acknowledging that without a script, you don't have anything. And without a crew, you don't have anything. And that's something that, you know, on every single film set I've been on, and, you know, my focus has really been creative producing, so it's really about putting the project together, putting the director with the writer, with with the above the line cast, and then there are other people who run that stuff. But I have seen that crews are just not treated very well. So when I am on a set, I make it my business to go up to the PAs and ask how they're doing and what do they need. I make it my business, when I'm working with a writer on a project, if the director has notes that they don't agree with, to try to find a bridge between the two of them. I think it's really about people talking to one another and trying to get their voices heard, but ultimately, it always has to be in service of the story. Does that answer your question? I hope so. And I'm sorry that, I'm sure everybody...
Also, new models have to be created.
Yeah.
Like in corporate America, I used to be a business consultant. They used to bring me out to teach people how to talk good to each other, okay? And also have respect talks about, like, what is it that people don't get about your job? What is it that you need to fulfill? Hollywood doesn't even have those, like, basic HR mechanisms. And it is a top-down approach. But there's no Yelp to see who the good people are now, is there?
But we do have creatrix. Yeah.
Creatricity, amen.
Yeah. In my job, I do a lot of reference checks. So it's also about, like, who do you know, getting to know other good people and making sure that you're working with, like, you have a no asshole policy. Like, that's really important. You can sometimes think that you're hiring somebody who's great and they get 4 reference checks and it turns out that, like, you really hired the wrong person. But I just think, like, build teams and build communities that are people that you trust and work well with, and that's going to ultimately create a top-down approach.
Did anyone else on the panel had any comments for that question, or just wanted to make sure you had a... Okay, cool. Do we have another question? You in the white T-shirt.
Hi, yeah, I actually also had a question for Jenny. I was wondering, what kind of challenges did you approach when creating your own production company, and how did you overcome it?
Can I just say that all of these people are on this panel, and I got 2 questions for myself. But so it's yeah. I work for a production company. I didn't create it. I've been there since the very beginning. The challenges are, how do you keep going when you're making movies that are a little bit harder to get made than other they're all female driven. A lot of the movies that we've made are dramas. And I think the challenge that we came up against is we were making movies that were really well reviewed that weren't making a lot of money. And so that's why we've recently pivoted to this new business model where we're putting together packages that are more sci-fi, more comedy, more thriller, more horror, and trying to take them into studios and get those made. So we are pivoting, but I think, the challenge is always, how do you combine art and commerce, right? And that's always going to be a challenge within the film industry, which is, like, diametrically in a lot of ways opposed.
And also, you have to get, like, really creative in, like, what it looks like to have a partner who finances the film. It might not be a rich, like a millionaire. It might be someone who's like, there's WeFunder. There are all these, like, different mechanisms that exist that can give people some type of safety to want to help, finance whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you just want to find people who you really love working with, who will, like, toil for free as you find the money, right?
Yeah, and find people, like I said, who have a skill set that you don't. Figure out what you're good at, figure out what you like doing, figure out the skills that you have that you can get better at, but also find people that you love working with who are really good at the things that you're not, because you can't do anything by yourself in this industry. It's impossible.
One more question. Right here in the front in the blue.
It's called AI, Cassie AI, maybe. That's what. But it's like, everybody up here, it's just, it excites me so much, but it makes me so angry because some things can be done that's really simple. And Hollywood is a very low-tech place. Like with Gina did y'all see Gina Davis' documentary? What's the name of it?
This changes everything.
First of all, everyone go home, watches This Changes Everything. It is like the battle cry of Hollywood. And everything that movie talks about as it relates to women and minorities, it exists at every single level of the industry. But she's so great in this. It's such a great documentary because also she did the thing that I'm dying to do too, which is she figured out how to get technology to help her in her cause. And like that part of the movie where it talks about they were able to just scan people's faces and be like, listen, okay, a woman's talking, now I'm man talking, but are they talking about something other than just about how I want to get with the guy? I'm like, yes, technology can be our friend. friend in this industry as much as it might be a foe. And if you're trying to build a company, chat AI, oh my God, the way you can just build a business plan in a second. So anyway, but go see this movie, okay? After seeing that movie Riled Up last night, it just made me feel not alone, that I'm not the only person who feels this way.
Yeah, it's on Netflix, actually. It's
Netflix, what
easy
did I
to
say?
see.
Oh yeah, it's on Netflix, don't forget, please. Yeah.
And Gina, what else is happening with This Changes Everything?
Well, actually, we just have gone into production on a Canadian version of it. People in Canada had seen it and wanted, so we're going to do This Changes Everything Canada. Maybe we'll do it all over the world.
Yeah. And when you think about how much
I'm Canadian.
there's so much production going on in Vancouver and places across Canada that, you know, it's really, so we're really excited about that. Well, I know we would love to talk more, but our time has come. So I just wanted to thank all of our esteemed panelists. Thank you for giving us our time. And also, if you haven't read Gina's book, Dying of Politeness, you can find that on Amazon or at your local bookstore. You're going to buy Andrea's book. You're going to watch Jenny's movies. Who knows? We're all going to be working for her. She's going to be running the world. And you're all going to join Creatricity. Yeah. Thank you.